Welcome to the Brutus Monroe channel. Annie Collins here. Today we'll be creating this mini slimline card. Let's go over the products I used to create this card. The fancy foliage dies, and this is a beautiful layering set. It has some tulips, some berries, and a variety of leaves. Each leaf has 2 dies, and I'll show you how I use 2 shades of green to create our leaves. Some glitter glaze in gold. Our Starlight mini slimline stencil. And that's what that looks like, and I'm going to kind of use it as our background, sort of as a fence. And I'm going to bring in the kind blossoms for our sentiment, which is "You are simply the best." I used a Not Your Mama's cardstock, and I cut it down for our card panel, our card base, and this little scrap for our sentiment. And our acrylic bubbles in rainbow colors, I pulled in just the pink and purple and yellow of those. Here's the foliage all die cut and assembled. I did that off screen to save us a bit of time. Here's some of the berries and the tulips and some of the leaves. There's like a sprig of leaves. I didn't use that, but there I have them for another project. All right, so let's jump into it. I went ahead and brought in my stick and stamp mat, and I put my card panel on there, and I'm lining my Starlight mini slimline stencil on top of it. Now our stencil is the same size as our card panel, so I'm going to bring in a little bit of washi tape because that's not being held by the stick and stamp mat, just my card panel is, to hold the corners down. I'm bringing in my craft knife, and I'm going to go ahead and spread our glitter glaze all across the stencil, and I want to fill it in completely. So what I'm trying to do here is create this beautiful gold trellis. That's what not a fence, it's a trellis design is what I'm going for here, which I will then adhere my florals on front, creating sort of a little garden theme. So I'm going to make sure that all this glitter glaze is in there nice and evenly, trying to avoid any little white gaps like I have right there. So I'm going to get that in nice and even. Once I have that, I'll clear off any of the extra glaze off my mat and quickly get it back into my little jar and close my jar. Always keep your plastic lid that comes with your jar so that your glaze stays nice and moist. Okay, I'm going to set my glaze aside, and I'll peel up my stencil, and I immediately place my stencil on a piece of scrap cardstock on the side. Gotta use up all that glitter. Don't want to waste it. Alright, so I'm going to peel off my panel here, and I'm going to set it to the side to dry. It's going to take a few minutes to dry, and I end up using my heat tool for a little bit just to take off the last bit of moisture. Alright, so that's going to set that to the side. I'm going to clean my stamp mat, my stick and stamp mat, because we'll be using that in my platform, my stamp platform here, to stamp my sentiment. So I just place it in there because it'll hold that little piece of paper, and I don't have to worry about magnets or anything getting in the way of my stamping. Alright, so I'm going to place the Simply the Best first on here, and then I'm going to bring in my Raven Detail ink, and I will stamp our sentiment, and then I will nestle the UR just between the S and the L of the word simply. Here I'm bringing in the UR, nestling it in there, and then I will stamp that again using the Raven Detail ink. Once I have that, I can now pop off my sentiment here, and I just do that by curling my mat, and my sentiment stays straight, and then I'll just put my clear cover on my mat and remove that from my space, so I can bring in my mini die cutting machine. And you can see here I have the 2 leaves layers, one in a lighter green and one in a darker green. That's the inner piece, and let me get my pokey tool here so I can get my outer piece out. There it is. Okay, so now we're just going to simply layer these, and you get great detail, which I didn't zoom in unfortunately to show you on these leaves. It leaves beautiful impressions, you know, where the veins of the leaves are. So I'm going to use a little bit of Barely Art glue here and adhere the inner portion of the leaf, and now you have this beautiful layered leaf in 2 tones of green. And these could be done in all shades. Imagine this for fall, all the beautiful changing leaves, because you have 3 different sizes of leaves in this die set. So I'll repeat the process here. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this one inner piece to this leaf, and then we'll get that on there. And then I'm going to show you quickly how I adhere the teeny tulips to the little tulip, I guess, little vine stem. So I just put a little bit on the back, and then I use my embellishment wand here and place it on top so that you have the little green parts holding your little flowers. Alright, so our panel is all dry. I'm going to bring it in. It's a little warped, but I'm not too worried about it. As you can see, it lines up with our card base beautifully. I'm going to set this aside for a second because I am going to trim down my sentiment first. So I'm going to bring in my mini trimmer here, and I'm just going to make this a nice straight thin band. It's going to go across our card completely. So I'm just trimming off any of the excess cardstock here. And sorry you hear my dog barking in the background. Okay, so I got this. I measured it out, make sure it's the same size. And now let's go ahead and start adhering or assembling our card. I'm going to use some tear tape here to adhere our card front panel to our card base. This is nice and strong. It'll minimize that little bit of warping we have left on our panel. So I'm going to go ahead and place this on all sides, all 4 sides, and then 2 strips down the center. Then I'll remove all of the tear tape backing so that we can adhere this to our card base. I only go partially on the sides here. This will help me line everything up, make sure I have everything straight before I remove the rest of the backing. So I go partial on 2 corners and then leave the other 2, and then the ones that do not have any adhesive exposed, those are the ones I use to line everything up and hold it in place. Once I have it the way I like it, I'm holding it there, I have it where I like it, I press down on the corners, and then I remove the rest of the backing here of the tape and press my panel. I have a little adhesive poking out there, sticking out. Just going to push it in, and then I press my panel down. Now I like to open my cards and press from the inside and make sure I have all the adhesive nicely on there. Alright, so now we can start building a little cluster of flowers down here. So I'm going to start by adhering 2 of these leaves down here, and that's where I'll then tuck everything underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck these little floral first, these little mini tulips. That's what I'm calling them. I don't know if they are mini tulips, but that's what they look like to me. So I'm going to put that little cluster there, and then I'll put some of the berries, the yellow ones. And I'm just using a little bit of my Barely Art glue, little dots of it behind these, pressing them down. And now you keep repeating this with all these little clusters. Now the tulips or florals I use I die cut in a darker pink and a lighter pink of cardstock. And the berries, I did the same thing, a lighter and darker shades of each of their color families. So I have the yellows and purples of these berries. So in one of the berries, the purple ones, I use a shimmer cardstock on top just to give a little more accent or highlight. Now I'm trying to get these last little berries on here, and I'm interweaving them so that you have some of the tulips and some of the berries sticking out. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish off with the last few leaves here on the bottom. And then I'm going to, I think I'm looking for my acrylic block here. Nope, I'm not. I was, but I wasn't sure if I needed it. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and adhere my last leaf here, and then I will trim anything that's hanging off, that little bit of the stem. I put a little bit more adhesive there because it was popping up. Alright, so those leaves on the bottom hide up the little stems. It just creates a nice little cluster across. Now I'm going to adhere my sentiment, and I'm going to use some foam tape to adhere the sentiment. But I want to make sure I cut off anything extra so that once I put my my foam tape on, it's nice and even. Okay, so now I'm going to grab some foam strips and place it on the back of this. Sorry, I'm a bit off screen here. There, I moved up so you can see what I'm doing. Just adhering the foam tape on the back. And then I just will remove the backing of that foam tape and adhere our sentiment. Like I said, this sentiment is going to go nice across the entire panel. It's a nice way to anchor it across this way. And then you can leave your card as is. I mean, there's plenty of shimmer and shine on here with the glitter glaze, which dries beautifully and non-flaking, which I love. But I'm going to go ahead and bring in our acrylic rainbow bubbles. I'm bringing in 2 pinks, 2 purples, and 2 yellows. I'm putting 3 around our sentiment, and the other 3 I'm nestling them within the foliage. If I can get them to stop popping around. I always drop these little things, even with an embellishment wand, because that's how it goes around here. Alright, so there's my last little bubble, and now our card is complete. So here's all the clusters and everything that I created. So let's go over again. For our sentiment, we used the Kind Blossoms stamp set. We used the Starlight mini stencil, the glitter glaze in gold, and the Fancy Foliage dies to create this mini slimline card. So I hope you found some inspiration, and if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to add them to the comments below.